This is Tom Doody, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Doody in a Google search for my site. Part 3. It was during those 2 days that Jenner's decathlon persona was born. The competition is spread over 2 days, 5 events. On each one, there are 3 flat running events, 100, a 400, and a 1500. 3 throws, shot put, discus, javelin. 3 jumps, long jump, high jump, pole vault, and the 110-meter hurdles. Jenner was an exceptional athlete. He's been a water skiing champion as a teenager too, who would pack a muscular 200 pounds on his 6'2" frame. But he was not naturally fast or explosive in a way that many other U.S. decathlon gold medalists had been. Ashton Eaton, 2012, Dan O'Brien, 76, Bill Toomey, 68, and Mitt Campbell, 56, are or were exceptional at some combination of sprinting, hurdling, and long jumping. Bruce was actually a slowish guy for a world-class decathlete, says Frank Zarnowski, 73, a decathlon expert, announcer and guru for more than 4 decades. Testing. And a friend of Jenner's since 1971. He had to squeeze every point out of every event. It's a long way to decathlon gold. Jenner would have to beat the event into submission with training and consistency, which fed Jenner's inclination toward obsessiveness. My greatest asset was my brain, Jenner said. I will outwork you. I will perform under pressure. This is the way decathlon was. Perfect. With so many events, the training is endless. 24/7, 365, says Fred Samara, 66, who was Jenner's training partner for 2 years before Montreal. I was just looking at my workout book from 1975. There is training entry for every day. Thanksgiving Day. There's an entry on Christmas Day, and even an entry on January 1st, as Bruce was with me for every one of those. The routine was perfect for Jenner. More on that later. Subtitle. Reader's note, subtitle. This is about who you are as a human being. What did I do next? I didn't make the world. I didn't make a difference in the world. In 1973, a year or so after graduation from Graceland, Jenner moved to San Jose with his wife, Christy, a minister's daughter who had attended the university. They drove west in their 63 Volkswagen Beetle. Jenner went to San Jose because the city had become thriving. though unofficial, training center for 24 athletes with Olympic aspirations. Many of them were throwers, like the discus man Mac Wilkins, who would win gold in Montreal. And John Powell, bronze, shot putter Al Furbach, fourth. Samara and his wife live 3 doors down the hall from the Jenners. Their new dog, a yellow lab named Bertha. Christy got a job as a flight attendant with United Airlines, which would be the couple's primary source of income. Bruce earns $700 a month selling life insurance, a job which he spent little time. These were the days when professional athletes were still barred from the games. Jenner did not have a coach. He was confident that he could train himself in sprints and distance. He kept a hurdle in the living room, a detail that made its way into nearly every story written about him during the runner-up to the Montreal Games. As for the other events, if it needed help with my discus, I would go to Mac Williams, says Jenner. If I needed help with the shot, I would go to Al Furbach. The athletes who trained with Jenner before the '76 Olympics remembered an earnest, agreeable workaholic. Of course, there were workaholics. Bruce was just one of those guys, says Wilkins, 65, who still coaches U.S. throwers. He would come around and throw in the throwing ring, and I would tease him. Hey, here comes the world's best average athlete. Thrower has skill level that is pretty good. Just didn't go very far because he weighs like 200 pounds, but he had 9 other events. And we understood that. Jenner threw the discus farther in Montreal than any other decathlete, and farther than any decathlete in 2012. Finished second in the shot put. The San Jose crew would gather several times a week for weight training at the Central YMCA. There were intense sessions. Throwers are often powerful lifters. In fact, Furbach won the division in U.S. powerlifting championships. I can picture Bruce perfectly in those sessions, says Furbach, 68, who had a long career as a sound engineer with 60 Minutes and NFL Films. I might be on the platform with 400 pounds on the bar, and Bruce would get right up there. We'd help him back the 285, which is still impressive. It was ballsy for him to get up there. Bruce was positively easygoing guy, and he had the confidence. In 688, Jenner, in the interview with CNN, that said that he experienced with banned substance for a period during his career, but quickly stopped. Today, Caitlyn says, I don't remember saying that, but I never did anything. I never had a problem with getting bigger naturally. I was scared to death that I would get caught. Furbach also said he never used PEDs and never saw them used by others. By the summer of 1975, Jenner was the best decathlete in the world after no heighting in the pole vault, which results in 0 points, and certain defeat at a national championship. He broke 72 Olympic gold medalist Nicolas Avilov's world record in August in Eugene and won the Pan Am Games in Mexico in October. He was metronomically efficient in the field event, and his speed was improving. There was always the 1500. Many decathletes coast through the race, but Jenner, all thick-legged and barrel-chest, hammered it every time. He was a great distance runner for his size, says Zarnowski. If it was even close after 9 events, he knew he would kick everybody's ass in the 1500, and they knew it too. Kenny Moore, an Olympic marathoner in 68 and 72 for many years afterward. A writer for SI recalls running a 300-meter intervals with Jenner on the Stanford golf course, a pencil-thin distance runner and rugged decathlete, matching strides in 45-second repeats. Jenner took pride in never collapsing to the track at the finish of the 1500, as many decathletes do, often theatrically. After breaking world record at the World Championships last summer in Beijing, Eaton crumbled at the finish line of the event. Jenner's called him first to congratulate him and then to chide him. Americans, Jenner said, don't fall down in the decathlon. There was a sense among his peers that Jenner was on the verge of a rare quality, bankable Olympic stardom. With the assistance of San Jose Community College coach Bert Bonanno, he had formed his own track club called San Jose Stars, which was he was the only member. This allowed Jenner to accept a whopping $6,000 from Adidas by having money funneled through Bonanno and the club without compromising his amateur status. There would have only been a few people getting more than that, if any, said Dwight Stones, an Olympian in 72, 76, 88, 84, and other for Jenner's friends. You weren't supposed to be making a damn thing. In the spring of the Olympic years, Jenner took a call from Hollywood agent George Wallach, but he said he did not sign a deal, which would have made Jenner's ineligible for the games. They kept in touch. The decathlon in Montreal was almost anticlimactic. 3 of Jenner's best events, the pole vault, javelin, and the 15,000, came at the end. He struggled briefly in the high jump, but Stones yelled to him from the stands, "Arms!" to get Jenner to engage his upper body more, and he cleared a personal best of 6'8". When Jenner ran personal best of 47.51 in the 400, at the close of the day, Bruce always went out in the 400 and died, said Samara. The Olympics, in the Olympics, he didn't die. He trained leader Guido Couchmeyer of West Germany. He trailed Guido Couchmeyer of West Germany by 35 points. And Avilov by 17. In essence, the competition was over as Jenner cleared the opening height in the pole vault. The 8th event, another decathlon approached him and said, "So Bruce, now you're a millionaire." Jenner could have jogged the 15,000 and won. He needed to run only 4:35 to break the world record. Zarnowski ran to the railing to tell him this, and Jenner said, "I know what I need." And he ran a personal best at 4:12.6, 4 minutes, 12.6 seconds, an equivalent of a 4:30 mile. His last 400 meters is 60 seconds flat. No previous Olympic championship had run the 15,000 faster than 4:22. None had since eclipsed the 4:27.21. I didn't spend the last 6 years of my life training to run slow, said Jenner. He crossed the finish line, and a young man jumped from the stands and handed Jenner a small flag. Caitlyn still has it, along with the uniform. Testing. Christie climbed down from the stands in a yellow shirt and read, "Go Jenner, go." They hugged. Jenner sensed himself holding, not just to his wife, but also the moment. This is going to be over, Caitlyn recalls thinking. And I've got a long life ahead. At a party that night, Jenner was introduced to an ABC executive whom Jenner then introduced to Wallach. Now he had an agent. Looking back, Jenner said he had no real plans for the future. A few days before the decathlon, Jenner told SI Frank Deford, "I'm scared to say anything. Everybody is ready to be reminded of Spitz, who failed to cash in big on his 7 gold medals in '72. If I mention one thing about what I'm considering, everybody will say, 'Hey, kid, he's just in it for the money.' So Jenner was considering something, but not track and field. He would never compete in another decathlon. No more mountains to climb," says Caitlyn today. Also, no more money on the table. Jenner has told the story many times, waking in a Montreal hotel room on the morning after winning the decathlon. He stood naked in front of the mirror with a gold medal around his neck. Caitlyn tells it again today, and like so much of what was described through the years, it plays very different in 2016. I said out loud, "What the hell am I going to do now?" "2016, on a cloudless winter day, Caitlyn Jenner falls into the corner of a beige couch in a sunken living room of the $3.6 million home she bought in early 2015 after her 3rd divorce.
Oh yeah. Or what you can do. Like if it's
It is a flat, concrete house, the top of a bluff, a single floor with a garage underneath. There are no other houses nearby, and few higher in Malibu. But Jenner's transition was a tabloid-fueled rumor. Paparazzi hunkered down in the distance and focused on the swimming pool with telephoto lenses. Through the window behind the couch, far beyond the brown hills, a winding roadway, you can see shimmering blue of the Pacific. Jenner makes a track and field joke for me. A visiting sports writer, Glamour magazine Woman of the Year, Olympian decathlon gold medalist, she says. There's got to be the greatest double of all time, right? It will never be matched. A double is when an athlete wins 2 events in the same meet. The former world's greatest athlete is wearing skinny jeans, loose ivory sweater, and wedge sandals. She has diamond-studded earrings, her nails painted pink, and her hair falls loosely to her clavicle. When she moves with the subtle grace of an athlete. Female, doesn't matter. Athletic grace is athletic grace. There are 2 kinds of history. There is what happened and what we interpret through the prism of time. There has been no prism quite like Jenner's. 40 years ago, this July, Bruce Jenner stood in front of the mirror in the Montreal hotel. And this is what we really thought. Even then, it disgusted me. It's big and thick and masculine. The rest of the world, it was thought it was like this Greek god kind of body. I hated it. That's what I was given, so I just tried to do the best I could with it. The story of decathlon gold is different now, shaped by Jenner's transition. It is a more important story and also far more complex. Billions of Americans have memories of Montreal, of the ABC telecast and the SI cover. All of those episodes of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. The guy is this woman. It is an adjustment. I get that, said Jenner, and I apologize for that part of it. It was my secret and my struggle. I understand that a lot of this is hard to grasp. This was a half century in the making, Jenner told Vanity Fair. And he first began wearing his mother's and sister's clothing at age 10. Jenner began taking hormones in the mid-'80s while living alone, twice divorced. Testing. I was thinking I would transition before 40. Would have been 1989, said Jenner. I was really struggling with it. But the best way I can put it is just wasn't time. It wasn't time in my life, and it wasn't time in society's. The issue was totally misunderstood. The only person I had heard that had transitioned was Renee Richards, former Richard Raskins, who transitioned in 1975 and played professional tennis for several years afterward. More than 2 decades later, separated from Kardashians and living alone, separated from Kardashian. Kardashian is the Kardashian mom, and that's Jenner's, this is a reader's note, that's Jenner's 3rd wife, now ex-wife, now 3rd ex-wife. Living alone again in Malibu. His 2 younger daughters in their late teens. Jenner made a decision in the fall 2014 and finally transitioned. Then it was time, Jenner said. I wasn't going to continue to lie to myself. In one of these 3 interviews, she leaned forward on the couch, held her right hand about 4 feet off the floor and said, "Little Caitlyn has been in there since I was this big." Sometimes she raised her cute little head more than others. I was female inside, but I wasn't an effeminate male, so I could hide easily in this male world. My life, distraction after distraction. My life was a distraction after distraction. Being a macho male was the way for me to try to convince myself that the women living inside of me really wasn't living inside of me. Makes a sweeping motion over the whole of her female self. Obviously, she said, it didn't work. There is, however, an implication that Jenner's decathlon training from 1970 to 1976 suppressed his gender issues. This is not true. They were always there, Jenner said. You just don't deal with them. I put my energy into beating the event. Samara remembers that around the time of the pole vault failure, 75 national championships, Jenner lacked his usual intensity. It was very unusual for Bruce, said Samara. At the time, he and Christy were getting into a lot of fights. We could hear them. Jenner said that before, several years after Montreal, Christy was the only person who knew his gender issues. Is this what they argued about? Christy and I were okay at that time, said Jenner. Even with her, I held back on how powerful the gender thing was. We fought because I was feeling pressure to win the games. I really had to win. Al Michaels tells the story working with Jenner post-Olympics at a motorcycle race in Terre Haute, Indiana, for a broadcaster on ABC's Wild World of Sports. Afterward, on a short flight, Michaels recalls that Jenner, then 27, asked Michaels if he ever considered having plastic surgery. I'm thinking, I'm 32, why would I do that, says Michaels. Bruce said, if you do it when you're young, nobody notices. Caitlyn laughs at hearing the story. Today I was always considered, today, when she hears the story today, I was always considering plastic surgery, she says. When you're gender dysphoric, constantly looking at yourself and seeing things that don't look right. The day after the finish of the decathlon in 1976, Wilkin recalls standing on the balcony outside the housing complex at the group U.S. Olympians shared in Montreal. Jenner was with him, and they looked over the field where dozens of athletes from around the world were throwing frisbees. The U.S. men's track and field team had won only 4 individual gold medals, but one of them was by Wilkins and the other by Jenner. Their work in San Jose had paid off. They looked over at Bruce and said, well, what did you expect, said Wilkins. He just nodded his head and said exactly this. Wilkins heard the satisfaction of those words. This is common for transgender people to disavow the pre-transition lives, which were often painful. Caitlyn disavows neither Bruce nor his accomplishments. I love Bruce, she said. I still love him today. I like what he did, the way he set an example for hard working and dedication. I'm proud of that part of my life. But this woman was living inside of me all my life. And it reached the point where I had to let her live and put Bruce inside. And I'm happier these last 12 months than I've ever been in my life. Those who knew Bruce Jenner well are left to take this fresh information and recalibrate their memories. Jenner told none of her old track buddies in the spring of 2015, when she was planning to transition. Day O'Brien spent many hours with Jenner in the 90s. It says every time you saw Bruce, he would look a little different. This is pretty shocking to me, but those different looks make some sense now. All the former athletes found out by watching Diane Sawyer, by reading stories a day later. Some reached out to Jenner. Mara texted her a few days later. She called him. They talked for 3 hours. A week later, she called again, talked for 2 more. The way I can remember it, she'd like to have an impact, said Mara. She referred to herself as Jenner, so maybe she was trying to make things comfortable for me. Samara has reached out, but has not heard back. All of them supported her. It's a little surprise, said Furbach, but it doesn't change a thing about the way I feel about her friendship, Wilkins said. He must have been in such a horrible angst for a lot of his life. I can't even imagine it. Stones recalls his own struggles. With advancing age, people pass me and felt like torture, said Stones. Nobody ever passed Bruce. He finished it and walked away, but then he carried this burden around for so long. It must have been torture. What Caitlyn is doing now, awesome. Eaton met Jenner after 2012 trials in Eugene. Bruce told me how the Olympics were different, a different kind of pressure, but they just kept doing what I'm doing now, said Eaton. One of those guys in sports you respect. The transition, it took a lot of courage. I admire her for that. She seems happy now. Soloway, meanwhile, summoned up a different image from Montreal, marinated over time, adjusted for recent events. But she was Bruce. She was pretty, she says. A lot of female athletes at the time were very, very butch. Bruce was beautiful and graceful. Jenner announced last spring, made her the most well-known transgender person in the world and possibly in history. She is certainly on a very short list that would include Christine Jorgensen, who transitioned in 1950s, was a national story. Richards, Orange. Orange is now the new black actress Lavender Cox. Given her Olympic history, her celebrity, and her tabloid rumors, it's likely she could have transitioned privately, but she could not do very much publicly. She said, with a goal, maybe I could make a difference, she said. This issue doesn't deserve to be in the gutter anymore. Jenner has been criticized for being insensitive to difficult lives of many trans people because of her wealth. Fame insulated her from many of their concerns. But she did transition, and the view of the entire world has remained there. That takes an extraordinary amount of bravery, said Olson Kennedy. Transgender society on the margins of acceptance. The estimated 700,000 trans American is presumed to be low because many trans people are reluctant to come forward. A 2011 study by National Center for Transgender Equality and National Gay and Lesbian Task Force. Trans people are 4 times more likely than the general population to live in poverty. Stunning 41% of respondents reported attempted suicide. 13 trans people have been murdered in 2016, and at least 11 transgender teenagers took their own lives last year. The June 12 shootings at a gay nightclub in Orlando appear to have been an act of intolerance against the LGBTQ community. Jenner posted a tweet that day, shocked and heartbroken, sending my thoughts and prayers. My brothers and sisters in Orlando, be safe the rest of this weekend, Pride. It is populist, often in crisis, evolving, not well understood by society. Jenner has tremendous power, but little experience as a transgender advocate, or even as a transgender person, said Jenner. I'm only a spokesperson for myself, my own story, but here shows includes several trans women, vastly more experience, in the sense that Jenner does advocacy simply by playing herself. During February's Fashion Week. During February's Fashion Week in New York City, Kris Kardashian touched off a small tabloid frenzy when she said that Caitlyn was the worst dressed of their clan. Soloway found this remarkable. People are talking about whether Kris or Caitlyn is the better dressed instead of, hey, Kris' partner is transgender. She says so. Caitlyn has become another Kardashian plot instead of being transgender. That's totally a positive thing. Last summer, Jenner received an Arthur Ashe Courage Award from ESPY, a decision that NBC's Bob Costas called. Last summer, Jenner received an Arthur Ashe College Award from ESPY, decision that NBC Bob Costas called a crass exploitation play. Barbara Walters named Jenner her most fascinating person of 2015, and Glamour named her Woman of the Year. Half of Jenner's double. However, when Jenner told BuzzFeed it's the hardest thing in the world about being a woman is figuring out what to wear, actress Rosie McGowan wrote a Facebook post in which she said, Caitlyn Jenner, you do not understand what being a woman is about at all. After a speech last November in Chicago, Jenner was confronted by several protesters who called her an insult to trans people. In an episode of I Am Kate, aired in March, she said that Donald Trump would be very good for women's issues, while also criticizing his macho attitude. In the same show, she said that she would never, ever vote for Hillary. Transgender advocacy groups have transitionally viewed conservatives as adversaries. But Jenner also said, just because I'm a woman doesn't make me a sudden liberal. She's a massive target, yet chooses not to hide. Anything Jenner posts on Twitter, where she has more than 3.9 million followers, is met with subhuman bile rising from the deep well of digital anonymity, along with solid measures of Yas Queen. She's trying, says triathlete Mosier. People have bestowed on this position of hers that she's trying to do her best. A shrill minority suggests that Caitlyn's gender change is a ploy to drum up interest in the various Kardashian properties. Cynicism so dark that it tests one's faith in the human spirit. Her old Olympic world struggles with gender definitions. Female sprinter Doody Chad of India, who is hyperandrogenic, she has naturally higher level of testosterone than international track and field community allows, challenging a ruling that says she has to either take hormone-suppressing drugs or undergo surgery to limit testosterone production to allow her to compete against women. Last July in court, arbitration of sports ruled Chad's favor and held that testosterone level alone is not sufficient cause for denying women the opportunity to compete against women. The ruling is provisional, track's governing body 2 years to provide further science. Chan's case has brought attention to controversy and hyperandrogenic middle distance runner Caster Semenya of South Africa, who's a favorite in Rio, is approaching the record times run by Eastern European athletes in the steroid-soaked 80s. In January, the IOC struck language from its bylaws requiring transgender athletes to have gender reassignment surgery before being allowed to compete. Each ruling moves athletics closer to a provision where gender is a spectrum rather than a one or the other proposition. Jenner is acutely tuned to the information in this area. During the interview, she opened her laptop and pulled up several stories related to gender in sports and encouraged me to write about the topic. When you see what's happened in this country on the bathroom controversy, politicians just don't understand or get it at all. When it comes to this subject, the Olympic movement is far ahead of the rest of the world. Good for them, she says. Jenner does not discuss whether she has plans to or if she has had reassignment surgery. Nobody's business whether I want to do that to my body, she says. Now she sits at a dining room table in her home. Over her left shoulder, the summer is falling toward the Pacific. The sun is falling toward the Pacific. The view is stunning. Jenner could tell Olympic stories all day about going back to Montreal a decade ago for the first and only time visiting the stadium. The track is going, and everything looked different. It was disorienting. There was a plaque outside with names of the medalists. That was nice to see. Not long ago, she hosted a group of transgender friends for dinner. They all wanted to see her medal, and Jenner broke it out. Everybody took pictures with it. And Caitlyn, show and tell all over again. In the late afternoon, Jenner felt silent as two women stood by nearby talking about the NFL, the Broncos, and Rams coming to Los Angeles. Finally, she shook her head theatrically and then raised one chin as if insulted. Oh, you guys, in your football talk, says the decathlon gold medalist. And then Caitlyn Jenner laughed at history, a convention, at herself. A single word, transition, never seemed more appropriate. This has been a marathon. This has been a decathlon. 3, this is end of 3 of 3. And listeners who might have some interest in my tech, this phone is connected by Google Wi-Fi. I struggle whether this should be on cell or Wi-Fi, given the quality of Google Starbucks Wi-Fi. I chose Wi-Fi. I'm still not sure what I'll do in future occasions. The battery problem that I've had multiple times has to do with being out. The first time was I was in Hoboken Terminal, and it was just low when I started. So that was just poor planning. The second time, which was earlier today, I was outside and I had all my screens. I had this screen bright so I could see it, and that just cruised through the battery. I then convinced myself that it was part of this Google Hangout consuming the battery rapidly, and that was false. It had to do with the screen being brighter. So now that I'm inside, the screen is down and the battery consumption has been normal. You know, typical like a phone call and not like anything that accelerates. So listeners, again, if you care about my tech, I've sample listened to this and it's been absolutely awesome. The voice quality is great. I also have the freedom of wireless. Like right now, I'm just a guy standing in the doorway and I have a laptop there that is completely inconspicuous. It sits on a table in Starbucks. And as long as I don't leave it for an extended period of time, it will not attract any attention. And here I stand in the doorway, wireless, and have quite a range. So I have freedom to walk around. I have excellent voice quality, and I have something for my listeners to watch if they decide to watch and listen. And so I'm very happy with this tech. So again, just in summary, if you're interested in my tech, my 3-part debut has had some additional lessons. One is outside. So I want to do more outside, but it's going to have to be at night or at least later in the evening. The bright sun creates a problem. This has been Tom Doody, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you're to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Doody in a Google search for my site. Thank you for listening. Have a good day, good evening, a restful night's sleep. Ciao.